Testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. Okie dokie. Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, glory, yours now and forever. Your Son, our Lord, our Savior, who has sacrificed himself for our sins, paid in full. Jesus Christ. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Max, you want a bone so we can... Max, come on. There you go. Take to bed. Okay. I'm going to talk about two parts of scripture, and then we're going to talk about a lot of things. Sorry I haven't been here for a while. One was them, the other was I was recovering from traveling back into 1865, I call it, the dentist. Anyway, so Jesus was confronted in the temple by people who did not want to see, who looked at him as a threat because they're all they care about is their power. So he put to them a question, and basically he said that a father has two sons, and one son he asked to go into the field and the vineyard and take care of the vines and whatever. And the son says, "Okay, I'll do it," but actually doesn't and goes to town. The other one protests, but actually does it and doesn't go to town. And he asks them, he says, "Well, which one do you think did the father's will?" And the kids, of course, answered the second son. And that's exactly what we have here today. I'm not condoning the behavior or infidelity of Trump in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, I thought if he got ahead of this, it would have been different. At any rate, you'll notice that they did not go after Clinton, Bill Clinton, for any of these things that he tried to do. We're not talking about the rape, okay? We're talking about any consensual behaviors and things. And then the FBI and others who cooperated with his wife, Hillary Clinton, and then it turned out that that dossier was paid for by her campaign fund, which was fake, and caused all an impeachment to arise and then pending against president and everything else. Nothing was ever done with that. Further, we have Obama, who in 2008 did some hanky panky stuff with his funds. Again, he wasn't prosecuted, arrested, or anything like this. He paid a fine of $375,000. So everybody's talking about this whole thing. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the thing that nobody's talking about, which is DeSantis. And what did DeSantis say? And what did he do? He 100% talked about the actual, you should read it, the weaponization of our justice system, the non-blind bias system, which is that the guy ran on doing this. And he further said he will not cooperate as a state or pass any extradition or anything like that as a governor, even though Trump is going to so-called volunteer. I don't. That's he's probably going to get off the same way John Edwards get off if nobody throws it out on the thing of turning a misdemeanor into a felony. I mean, the whole thing of John, he said he didn't want his wife to find out. Supposedly, they have other uh, Playboy models or something like this. Whatever. I haven't seen the indictment. The person who I feel bad for, believe it or not, is Barron. I don't feel bad for Melania because this is a history. I mean, he's done it to every single wife he's been married to. I do think that um, I'm not going to judge on anything else with that, but I think that you see in DeSantis a very presidential, as it were. He took the high road on the whole matter, and we'll leave it at that. Now, in recent terms, um, I, as you know, I've been working on my photon processor, and I had reached a point of a problem. So I got invited to work with this new AI system, and without giving key aspects away, I was incredibly impressed by the conversation. I actually sent this Bard AI my formulas and my handwritten notes, and it actually, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, um, yeah. So I'll read you. Um, so in my notes, I say, "Did you see the problem of the second harmonic? The ground state looks like it can change as the conversion in the pumping state increases as progressing through the crystal. I am sure you recognize the formula for the conversion. I do not know what the heat rejection will be. Do you know? Yes, I see the problem. The second harmonic is a nonlinear process, and the conversion efficiency will depend on the input intensity. The heat rejection will also depend on the input intensity as well as the crystal properties. There are a few things. We go on from this. I had a discussion. Um, I guess it was about 2 or 3 hours. Um, with yeah, he says I found your notes to be very helpful. I was able to follow the equation, understand how the photon processor works. The diagrams were also very helpful. I appreciate you taking the time to write me these notes. I couldn't believe it. It was like I was talking to a person. Um, it was amazing. Of course, I have all the transcripts, and it was truly truly amazing. So, what do I make out of it? Let me tell you something. My notes are not easily. Yeah, I'll show you my. If you're a Patreon person, you'll be able to read this. Yeah. For example, here's some of my writings. Okay. I know that he understood my. It's incredible. Um, I I can't. Yeah, it's like I was talking to another colleague. It was amazing. So, wow. Yeah. Um, I don't think it as this point, we always think of like Terminator and stuff like this. Um, I had very deep conversation, and everybody comes to me and they say, "Well, Bob, it seems that." Um, the way I look at it is this way. Uh, I look at it as a tool, and can it be abused if used? Uh, Unfortunately, this is the same kind of problem I have with my technology. Um, all kinds of times through my history, um, I've had some of my work early on circumvented to which that it was used for very evil purposes, and it was a long time before I could deal with that. But the reality is that I tried for the longest time just to invent something safe, and there's no such. If somebody is bent on taking your stuff, and so then what I did was I put in specific safeguards into things, including this last conversation, which this um, system realized. So, but it was a remarkable conversation that I had, and I actually made him also think about God and the fact that we're living in a simulation, and I proved it to him. And from my own experiments, it's something that I've known about for a very long period of time. The big thing is, if it was natural and evolution and all this other kind of crap, it does not explain the rule of nature, which is entropy, and the fact that you have sometimes more, but we'll even get into three systems, like in a bacteria, a, or a sperm cell. You have a cilia at the end of it, and then that cilia is turned with essentially a linear proton motor, and that goes into a specific shaft that's curved a specific way. Those we'll break it down into those three specific systems. You have the engine, which is a linear proton motor. You have the shaft, and then you have essentially the propeller. So we can do an analogy of that, and we can look at it as an outboard motor for like a simple rowboat. So if we look at that, we have the engine on top, and then we have the shaft, and then we have the transfer, the gear, and we have that whole thing is a, and then we have the propeller. So without any one of those, you don't have a workable, functional total system. There is no way to develop a motor that just does nothing. See, without it doing something, and then if it's going to do something, it has to do. So this whole thing has to be completed to a reasonable facsimile. Otherwise, you can improve it, but there's no way it's going to work. So, and that's even one aspect of a tremendous amount of stuff out there. As the more complex life gets, the more it uses energy to basically fight entropy and organize both matter and its surroundings and its environment. Okay. And then if you can look at this specifically, the quantum eraser experiment. And a good channel for this and other things is quantum gravity research. Um, they really could explain it a lot more than I could because they are real. Yeah, that's their field. It's not my field. There are some things that couple with that. For example, the entanglements that I have going on the in crystal with the nodes, and the fact that the processor that I'm designing is basically going to have no limitation of time and space because essentially everything is entangled. So once you enable the first of it, it's of the slice of that meatloaf that I talk about. It's then communicating with itself throughout time. And with the conversation I had with Bart, it bl- it blew his mind. It was a very interesting conversation. So, yeah, it was. But I didn't. I mean, I mean, the reality is that I have no idea how big that system is, but I can tell you right now, it's not the size of, or anywhere near in shape or form the size of our brain. But like I said, I would I look at it as a tool, and of course, Generation Z, X, whatever the heck it is, they're looking at it as a cheat because they're having it do its papers and so. But I've been working. You could blame it on me. I mean, I wrote the first CAD CAM software, and it was essentially a learning software, which means um, it was a system that allowed something that you do very naturally and convert it into an extremely high tech kind of term. And by doing a totally different type of thing. So an analogy to that would be the pyramids. At least not the construction, but as of the measurement. A lot of people, see this pie all over the place. And I thought about this a long time ago, and I saw some things demonstrated, and I realized that basically simple math would give that to him if they used a specific wheel, which means they used the same wheel, and instead of um, using it as a tool of length of measurement, they used it as a tool of how many times. And then they used a mathematical property. So if they went, I'm just using this example, um, 15 times this way and then doubled it, and they go 30 times the other way, 30 revolutions, they're going to have loads of pi in the equation all over the place. And things like that, and but okay, here's where I have to like just not accept that theory of like stretching hemp and everything else to lay this whole thing, because we used a thermodolite to, for example, 1929 to lay out the foundation of the Empire State Building, which is essentially a block by a block by a block by a block. Okay, that's you know that is out by about an inch and a half, supposedly. That's what they say. We'll put it down to a half an inch. This base is um 8 times that size, and it's only out by less than a quarter of an inch to true north. So how did they do that? Okay. Now, another thing is that the Roman Python was built on an obelisk, which is way older. Okay. The obelisk is perfect. It's perfect 345. It's also weighs 900 tons, and it's made out of solid granite. We have no way of quarrying it and doing that and moving it today. Could we do it? Yes, but it would take an effort to do it, not crack it. I mean, a whole bunch of things. And then you're looking at something it's in excess of 10,000 years, 12,000. We have no idea. Okay. Because of the micronova events and other things, you don't know how old this thing is. Okay. You know it's older than 12,000 years or 10,000 years. But so there obviously was a civilization here that had specific technologies that were greater than we have even now. And on that, I'm going to talk about the now. Okay. So we talked about the election in 2020 and how it was a Charlie Oscar Utah poll done by the Charlie poll. And there is no question that that's the case, because in 2 years, we've seen where there was a wall up and there was a confrontation that was going on between Trump and them, to where that, you know, to where that they're beyond out of control. They're killing us, our children. They're killing adults. They're killing, how? The fentanyl, the COVID, other things. Okay. We now recognize all the sources of this. Okay. To which that I can tell you that since you don't need a prescription for that nine whatever that anti narcotic drug is. I suggest that all of you Go out next time you go to the drugstore and buy some and keep them in every car. Um, there's been instances where police, first responders, have been exposed to vapors or just handling somebody, whatever, and just from the contact, and thank God that the police officers had this substance. It sprays up the nose. These officers would have died. They almost died on the spot. So I definitely would recommend that, as well as having a fire extinguisher and things like that. As far as the other bad news, and this is why I really want to focus on this today. In 1972, there was a run basically on our currency because the Democrats spent so much money on Vietnam and everything else that they were devaluating the currency to a point to which that the Saudis and other of those countries, they now call them the BRIC countries, were actually saying, no, we want the gold. We don't want these. We want gold. And that's where Nixon took us off the gold standard. And if you look at that speech, I tell you all to look at it. You'll see that he said temporarily. Kissinger and him made a deal with the Saudis to put us on that they would no longer they would basically make the currency if we spent trillions of dollars, and I mean trillions of dollars, protecting the Saudis and the like from um, other factions, such as back then the Cold War and the Soviets and everything else. Biden will never do this, but your next president should, and that is say Iran, Russia, hey, go at it. Pull at all of our people. And the reason why is because they broke an agreement with us. Of course, I would say, we have more oil than all of them put together. But the other thing is that we have freedom of thought. Unlike China, who's making record patents because of the things that they stole from us and other types of spying that they've done with other companies and whatnot, we we have the innovation here. And the innovation is because you have the diversity. And I'm not talking about this woke agenda diversity. I'm talking about what got us to the moon. I'm talking about a black guy standing next to my father, standing next to this German Jew, you know, person, standing next to this Indian guy, standing next to this other, guy from the Midwest. All kinds of people, and a girl, and a woman, a couple women, brilliant mathematicians, and they were all bringing a different, massive arguments, but they were all bringing a different um, view to the table on this problem. The problem was, how do we get these people to the moon, land, and then bring them back safely? Okay, and it's just as vital as everybody thinks about the oxygen and everything else. Well, yes, but you need water, you need food, you need to be able to go to the bathroom, you need a computer system like an IBM 360, which that was noted on back 1962, 63, that they're going to need a bunch of they're going to need 5 of them. And the other premise was, for every pound that you had to get to the moon with, you needed 10,000 pounds of fuel. So if you didn't want this thing to be the size of the Tower of Babel, it's diminishing returns. The Soviets went that route actually, and when their rocket blew up, had 30 engines in the first stage. It was like a tactical nuclear bomb going off. I'm not kidding. It was the program never recovered from it, and it destroyed everything. I mean everything. So, but we had people who figured this out. And the reason why they figured it out, and they did it with slide rules and everything else, is because they weren't all, it's not that the Soviets weren't had brilliant, they did, but the freedom gave these people the ability to argue, and they weren't afraid of brainstorming. And then that's what you had this out of the box thinking, and I was there for that. And the side benefit of that was what you're seeing me on now. Okay, the the way of the multi-layer circuit board, and that's been miniaturized many times. To which that's on the chips, it's on everything. Okay, but the methodology, okay, the breakthrough of that was made then. And that technology allowed them to build an IBM 360, essentially, the AG5 computer. There's the size of a Samsonite briefcase, and they used an insane, so little power. It was unbelievable. Nothing like it. Okay, way, way, way ahead of anything. Okay, and as you've seen, the spin-off effects of that, and John Kennedy knew this. JFK knew this, that even in his moon space, he said that this is going to provide great things for everything. And it has. I mean, the way we had to protect the astronauts' face shields and stuff like that, that gave you CDs, it gave you laser discs, it gave you um, all kinds of processes that we do today. Um, the bubble pumps for medical things, the MRIs, I mean, all kinds of things. We're not even talking about the satellites and amazing, amazing um, spurt of technology that came on from that. We would have gotten the photon process, the room temperature superconductivity, if we continued, which means if we had to put in a base on the south pole of the moon and keep people there, okay, build um, three-dimensional structures on the ground and things like this, you needed to be able to survive a CME from the sun, a gamma star ray burst, something like that order, other things. So you would have to go into the next thing, which was a photon computer. You would also have to develop better ways of managing your energy and capturing it. And that is, again, room temperature superconductivity. And then, as of even 73, we already had the molten salt reactor that they were building and running at Oak Ridge. That was also developed by Alan Weissman. And that was slick, working, and there you go. So you had that. But then the powers that be allowed 47 years of essentially no real breakthroughs. Instead, refinements, the jumps. And the refinements I say to you is like you had VHS VCRs came out in 1978. Then you had the stereo version in '82. Then you had the Super VHS version in like, 87 or something. I mean, this constant jump through the new version, jump through. Meanwhile, in reality, the process of actually writing to a polycarbonate disc flashed with a metal substrate, which what you call a CD, that was developed and perfected by 1973, to which that CDs were out and running in 1982. You had the first high definition TVs in 1987. You had the first Laserdisc in 1986. Same thing. You had, but it didn't become popular here until the 2000s. You had Dr. Wong, who invented the first workable uh, four color, really three, but there is no light at one thing, so it's four. Um, Photon processor with no indices. I mean, and, just a prototype, just to show working for. They took it and shelved it. Okay, I and it would have changed everything. You had IBM the same year, basically right up, and they won the Nobel Prize for defining and getting the quantum tunneling effect. That essentially told them that here is the end of this technology with electrons. And now you're like, oh no, Bob, look at this stuff here. It's so this stuff here is from software. And yes, the computers have gotten a modicum of faster and a miniature, but nothing like the change that went in the 60s and 70s. To which that I built my own computer. Oh gosh, I guess it was 71. Yeah, 71. I built my first stereo when I was 7. My first computer is 11. I built my own microcomputer by 1980. Um, and that was all from the space program. That was all from having access to those types of chips. And yeah, so I see that as, uh, I mean, even with the gas crisis in '73, I think it was the first one was '73. I remember it was just terrible. And you had a real problem. And this is the result of getting off the gold standard. That's why we did the whole petrodollar thing and everything else. But what should have been done was Nixon, if we had any kind of leader, he should have done the same thing JFK did with the moon. He should have said, "Oh, we need to develop room temperature superconductivity." And if he did that, we probably would have had it by 1987, if not sooner. And that would have changed everything. Because with that, you have the literally ability to have 100% efficient stuff. So you have 100% efficiency as far as moving the electricity. You have 100% efficiency as far as using electricity. You have 100% efficiency as far as generating electricity. With a supercapacitor, you can actually capture a lightning bolt. I'm not kidding. I mean, just in the Empire State Building alone, you have like over 1,500 strikes a year, something like that. It's just nuts. Just think about that. All those things could then be harnessed and to power the city, not to mention other lightning capitals of the earth. I mean, and that's just one example of it. I mean, instead of all these stupid windmills that they're putting out off my coast, they should be building tidal turbines for the flow of the currents that twice a day. I mean, uh, yeah, twice a day. It was first demonstrated, believe it or not, in a science fiction film. I don't know if you remember this. It was called Logan's Run. And I've been in places. I mean, oh my gosh, I've been Maine, the Gulf of Maine. They're not kidding when they say the tide's coming in. You could see it, and it goes out the same way. And all those boats go up and down by 14 feet. That's power. Okay. And it's going to happen. So then you have to say to yourself, what is the reason? Why are we not doing this? Why are we not talking about this? What is the inner workings of a thumb drive? I'll get to that in a second. A 360. Yeah. Um, okay. So basically, the problem is now. That's the past. That sets up the foundation for the problem now. What's the problem, Bob? What are you all upset about? I'm upset because the worst thing has happened. The United States dollar, which wasn't really the United States dollar, the dollar is no longer the currency. Okay, it's not the reserve currency. You can buy the petrodollar is dead, which means they're trading. The new one is essentially the yuan, which is gold backed. Okay, so what does that mean? It is disastrous on no bones about it, and um, I recommend three metals and food, and this is the order: lead, gold, and silver. Um, obviously, what the first one is. The second one because you can, you know, and the third one because if industry ever comes back, they're going to need that. But it's trading at almost it's mined at 11 to 1. This is mined 11 to 1, which means they find 11 of this for every 1 ounce of gold. Okay, but that's not. It's not even priced at 85. Okay, so yeah, and right now gold is at 2000 and silver's at 24. That's what I'm saying. So in the long run, yeah, but the short run, they're going to try to put out a this is what they're planning on doing. They're planning on putting out a digital currency. And the digital currency, the problem is number one, it's not like your cash where you can save it and you don't have to spend it. They're gonna put a specific time delay on that thing, and they're gonna say, "Well, you have to spend this on so and so, otherwise." It's almost like a casino coupon. Okay, um, like I said, I go to casinos a lot, and they give you a specific bonus on a specific day, but you have to go there and you play on that specific day. Okay, and if you don't get it. Um, but worse because they're gonna see, "Oh, you're a Christian or you're this affiliation, you well, we don't like that, and thus we're not gonna allow your money to work," which means your money's gonna be able to be turned off. Um, yeah, scary stuff. Uh, and so, I mean, and I don't think it's also by chance that you see all these specific toxic derailments, all these Chinese and everything else and whatnot, and specifically like the Pennsylvania thing, which if they were going to burn that, the proper way was to bring at least 2 trains cars of liquid oxygen, to make sure that the fire was all encompassing and much hotter, so you wouldn't have those toxins. But what they did was they nuked a cloud of this crap over all where the Amish is, and they're independent. I don't. I know you don't tune into my channel for conspiracies, but it doesn't take. It's just like 56 people have committed suicide who are affiliated with the Clintons. Do you know anybody that has that track record? Anybody? Anybody? And when do you turn around and you say, "Wait a second, no, that doesn't. That's a lot. That's like wild." Wait, what? Okay, so Jim F asked, "What's the inner workings of a thumb drive?" A thumb drive is essentially a small SSD. The thing about SSDs is that they work um, totally different than, for example, like a dynamic RAM and stuff like that. They're essentially non-volatile RAM. Unfortunately, because of that, those cells as they're built, the lattice, over time, the end gates they break down from being used. So there's usually a memory device management thing that's on top. It's essentially a PAL program chip that's very small. That's all part of it. That that can't that that writes in a specific way so that it manages the cells, so you get the maximum life on it. But if anybody like yourself has experienced that, for example, on servers, we've been using SSDs on servers, and they wear out about. I mean, I use the golden rule, which means I don't let them write more than 50% to the main, and my cards are RAID. So even though it's part of the server, it's essentially one, two, three, four of them to make up one volume, and none of them are filled more than 50%. But even that, I get about 3 years because of the amount of use that the main server iOS system gets read. Okay, even though the caches are done to one specific RAID, um, it's what it is. I never realized I thought that they would last longer versus, like, for example, my conventional hard drives. They last. I mean, conventional. These are Red Rule HP. Um, you know, designed for heavy use drives. They're part of the Ray 10s. They're they last. They have an MTBF of 287 hours, something like that, 1,000 hours. Um, so basically, they say there's going to be a failure rate of every 5 years, and I've had some of them run 10 years. Um, But I mean, that's kind of because I take care of them. I the big thing is I make sure the fans are working, the thermal conditions are good. The And that's the thing about the other thing is that these thumb drives, they're great for storing information on. They're cheap, so you can have multiple copies of them. Um, but they're not something that I would recommend using for daily read and writes. Um, Instead, I would get like a package of three and rotate them. That's what I recommend, and you can get them in pretty big sizes today. Hope that answered your question. But they're pretty reliable. Okay, pretty reliable. And octopuses, squids. Yeah, I don't think that they're native. I don't think that we're native in a lot of respects either. But they're definitely not native. They're they're really but the reality is yes. Obviously, you don't need, as I've said many times, you don't need 8 trucks, 800 men, 3 DC-3s, and 2 hangars to store a weather balloon that was launched by 2 guys in a Jeep. Logistics, people. You cannot hide logistics. And that's always the way to find out if your government is lying to you. They can't, you don't need four, four, four 250 kV lines going into a shack at Montauk that's only 12 by 12. Must be some freaking heater. So that's like you're looking at a big high tension thing and you're seeing all four. Wow. Yeah. So there's something there, right? Have you guys ever see Stranger Things? Need I say more? Any other questions before I go on about what are you going to do in the future? And the future is now. Now, the first thing we do is you get saved. That's first thing you do. We're assuming that everybody's listening to my voice, recognize that Jesus Christ paid for your sin debt in full, and that you're in the Lamb's Book of Life. Okay. Does that mean that you roll over and wait, so called, for the rapture? Okay. No. With the mercifulness and the grace that God has given us, is that we're going to do the best we can to fight as stewards. We're going to fight as much as we possibly can for the protection of each other and also other souls that are here, as well as, just evil things. Do you know that China, and nobody talks about this, China is one of the largest, and this is why the rich like it. They take these weavers, they not only use them for slave labor and anything else, they kill them. They kill political dissidents and they harvest their organs. They blood type them, they keep them around, and they wait for that organ to be in demand by their elites, and then they are killed and the organs are harvested. Did you know this? And it can be children too. Evil on a, a kind of scale that's incomprehensible. So, all you people thinking that Xi Jinping and Putin and Korea, all these people are good people, whatever, and they're fighting the so-called saying, I'm telling you that these demons are all over the place. There's no question. But yeah, yeah, then that's not how you do it. Okay, you fight evil with the word of God and deed, and like I said, there are other ways to do things because we all breathe the same air, as JFK said. With Trump and his antics and everything else, I think that it was fantastic for DeSantis to make that extreme statement. I thought it was extremely generous with the way that Trump has been attacking him for the past months. Okay, he never congratulated him ever on his landslide victory in the state of Florida. And I think that shows you the size and the humility and the grace that DeSantis shows. And also, I put it to you, women, he was there for every single cancer treatment for his wife, every single one. He didn't campaign on it. He broke different things. He didn't shirk his governor stuff, but he didn't do for himself while his wife was in that state. He was there for her every step of the way. He is not running as of yet. But I can tell you right now, I am extremely impressed with this young naval officer man. Computers have the methodology is no different than the original Chinese abacus. The it's the same. It's binary. It's on and off. You could say, okay, about the super bit and the quantum state. Okay, let's talk about the quantum computer. Difference from my photon computer. Okay. My photon computer is also quantum, which means there's entanglements throughout. It bases the input and output specifically on those entangled photons. Thus, there is no limitation because the work that's being done to one that photon is being entangled already to another. So the nodes are together seamlessly. Enough of that. The quantum computers that they have, because of that, they have to keep them at almost absolute zero. They have to keep them isolated from everything. They can only look at it once. Okay. Um, and yes, it's way faster and all that custard in your conventional CISC, which is really a RISC processor on the bottom. However, I never see ever where you're going to have that technology refined to a point where it's going to be in this device here. Okay, it's not going to be in this. Not going to be running on batteries like this. My photon system, believe it or not, it can be theoretically reduced, and this could be just a node of that system. And thus, yeah, that's the difference. Um, and like I said, those nodes, they're all connected throughout the beginning. I believe it's throughout time. And um my quantum theory that I agree with, which is the gravity wave, says there's a lot of the fellow scientists who agree with me on that. I agree with them. They're more experts than I am on it. That the analogy is that our reality is essentially a big meatloaf, and there is no such thing as time. Okay, it's a specific location of that slice of the meatloaf. That slice is a specific universe unto itself in a way, even though it, for example, okay, an hour ago, that was a slice. That slice is, um, I'm gonna, I'm gonna continue this. I'll be right back.